Hey everyone, I'm Adam Haritan, and in this video I'm going to feature 16 wild edible mushrooms that you can forage during the autumn months. Now many of these species actually grow during the summer months. Some of these species grow into winter, and at least one of these mushrooms, if not two, could be found during the late weeks of spring. But for the most part, all of these mushrooms can be found right in the middle of autumn. And I'm going to feature the ones that grow in eastern North America because that's where I live. Those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. I just want to throw it out there that this is not meant to be an exhaustive list of every mushroom that can be foraged during the autumn months. You know, I left out a lot of species. I'm only including the ones that I'm most familiar with, the ones that I think you'll most enjoy. So before you leave a comment saying, hey, you forgot this mushroom, why didn't you include this mushroom? I can't believe you left out this mushroom. Just know I'm warning you. I'm not including every single one, just 16 that I think you'll most enjoy. Also, please note that this is not meant to serve as a replacement for a field guide, for a mushroom club, for going out with knowledgeable mushroom hunters. This list is just an introduction into species that grow during the autumn months with some key identifying features. You know, many times when I release a video on a particular mushroom, I spend 10 to 15 minutes on one species. If I would do that in this video would clearly be over 160 minutes long, so I'm not going to do that. So definitely consult other field guides, join your mushroom club, go out with people who know a thing or two about foraging wild mushrooms, and you'll be well on your way to confidently identifying all the species in this video. Also, just a few thoughts on edibility, a few guidelines on edibility. Whenever I say that a mushroom is edible in this video, I definitely mean edible when cooked. If you decide to eat any of these wild mushrooms, definitely cook them and cook them well. Do not, under any circumstances, eat these mushrooms raw because you could get very sick doing so. Number two, start small. If it's your first time finding and identifying and eating any of these wild mushrooms, definitely start small. You don't want to cook a whole lot because some people just can't tolerate some of these wild edible mushroom species. So start small just to make sure that you can tolerate them. And number three, don't combine wild mushroom species if it's your first time eating them. Let's say you go out into the woods on a mushroom hunting excursion and you find all 16 of these wild edible mushrooms in one day. First, consider yourself lucky, but also don't eat all those 16 wild edible mushroom species in one meal. Just try one of them, see how your body reacts, wait 24 hours, wait 48 hours before moving on to the next mushroom. And lastly, if you really enjoy learning mushrooms by season, perhaps you'd be interested in hearing that I'm currently working on and creating an extensive online mushroom hunting video course. This is a year-long class designed to guide you through all the seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, helping you feel confident in positively identifying the most popular edible mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, and poisonous mushrooms. This course will feature over 50 brand new videos, nothing that I've posted on YouTube so far. Not only will we be talking about identifying features, we'll also be talking about how to cook wild mushrooms, how to preserve them, various ways of preserving them. We'll be talking about medicinal mushrooms, how to make extractions like decoctions and tinctures. I know a lot of you have been asking me how I like to make my medicinal mushroom extraction, so we're going to cover those step by step. We'll also be talking about the science of mycology, including mushroom ecology, biology, anatomy, and a whole lot more. So I've been working on this for a very long time, all year long. I still have some work to do, so it probably won't be released until the spring of 2019, but I'm really excited to put this out there and to bring this forward. And if you're interested in learning more about this, you'll want to go over to learnyourland.com, sign up for the email newsletter, put your name and your email address in that box, and I'll be sending updates to that list. I will not be putting this course on YouTube. It will be 100% exclusive to learnyourland.com. So if you want to feel confident in being guided through all the seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, connecting with various mushrooms and utilizing wild mushrooms, head on over to learnyourland.com, sign up for the email newsletter, and I'll keep you posted. So without any further introduction on my part, let's get into wild edible autumn mushroom species. So of course, to kick off this list, we are going to talk about hen of the woods, the maitake mushroom, sheep's head. The Latin name is Grifola frondosa, and that species name frondosa means full of leaves because of the leaf-like appearance of the caps of this mushroom. Now this mushroom is a favorite amongst fall mushroom hunters, and no surprise, it's one of my favorites. It tastes great, rather meaty in my opinion. It can be found in abundance, and the medicinal potential of this mushroom is rather impressive. There are numerous studies conducted on the maitake mushroom, with the majority of research focusing on one particular compound known as diffraction. This compound, diffraction, has been studied for its role in stimulating immune system cells like macrophages and natural killer cells, also for its ability to reduce tumor cell viability and to repress cancer progression. So, what are some key identifying features of the maitake mushroom? Well, it's a large, grayish-brownish polypore mushroom containing numerous overlapping caps. Each cap is typically fan-shaped and fleshy, not woody like you'll see in other polypore fungi. Underneath each cap is a whitish, grayish pore surface containing numerous tiny pores, hence the classification of the species as a polypore mushroom. There are no gills, just a pore surface. The spore print of hen of the woods is white. Now this delicious mushroom tends to grow late summer through fall, and it's often found around the bases of oak trees, either living or dead oak trees. You'll probably have a lot of luck looking under the bases of very large and old oak trees. You can also find hen of the woods at the bases of other hardwood trees like beeches and maples, sometimes directly on the trees, but oftentimes right up against the bases of the trees or a few inches away. So now that we talked about hen of the woods, let's focus our attention on chicken of the woods, also known as the chicken mushroom. Not only is this mushroom very easy to learn, it's also very easy to spot, even from a distance. This mushroom is certainly a favorite amongst many mushroom hunters because its texture can resemble chicken meat when cooked. It grows rather prolifically and its season is expansive. Chicken of the woods can grow from late spring all the way through mid-autumn. So let's go over two chicken of the woods species. The first is Latipore sulphureus, also known as sulfur shelf. This mushroom grows in overlapping clusters or as a rosette on deciduous wood. Each individual cap can be up to 12 inches wide, though oftentimes you'll find individual caps that are much larger than this. The top of the mushroom is typically smooth and faintly wrinkled, and when fresh, its color is bright orange to yellowish orange, sometimes with a bright yellow margin. One of the key identifying features of the chicken mushroom can be found on the underside of the cap. This is a polypore mushroom because its fertile surface contains numerous pores from where the spores are dispersed. This means that there are no gills on the underside of the chicken mushroom, and there will never be gills on the underside, at least for the next couple of millennia. This mushroom always contains a pore surface with very tiny pores. In this particular species, Latipore sulphureus, the pore surface is bright yellow when fresh, though this color will fade with age. The spore print from Latipore sulphureus is white. Another chicken mushroom species is Latipore cincinnatus, and while it looks and acts like Latipore sulphureus, there are some key differences. Latipore cincinnatus typically grows either at the bases of hardwood trees or oftentimes a few feet away from hardwood trees. Latipore cincinnatus has a cap that is somewhat duller, almost pale orange to pinkish orange in color. Also, on the underside, Latipore cincinnatus has pores that are peachish white in color. Remember, Latipore sulphureus has pores that are bright yellow. Regardless, both species are edible, and I enjoy them both when they're very young. Once they're older, they tend to lose their appeal, at least in my opinion. Now, not everyone who cooks and eats chicken mushrooms can tolerate them. I know a few people who cannot eat chicken mushrooms even if they're cooked well. So if you've never eaten either of these mushrooms before, after you positively identify them, start small and cook very well. Let's move on to the fourth mushroom. Here in eastern North America, chanterelles are typically harvested during the summer months, at least in abundance, though a few species linger on into the autumn months, sometimes even into winter, like the winter chanterelle, also known as the yellowfoot chanterelle. Now what's really fascinating about this fungus is that even though its common name suggests that it's a chanterelle mushroom, its genus name suggests that it's more like a black trumpet. Craterellus is its genus name, that's also the genus of black trumpet mushrooms. However, chanterelles and black trumpets are in the same family of fungi, the Cantharellaceae family. So these mushrooms are very closely related. Pretty fascinating stuff, huh? So the yellowfoot chanterelle is fairly easy to identify. It's on the smaller side, typically up to 3 inches across and up to 3.5 inches tall. The cap is yellowish brown to grayish brown, and with age it becomes funnel shaped with a central depression. On the underside of the cap, you will see a fertile surface comprised of vein-like ridges that run down the stalk. These ridges are thickened and blunt, not sharply defined like you would see in most gilled fungi. The bluntly ridged fertile surface is a key feature not just for the yellowfoot chanterelle, but for other chanterelles. The stalk is typically hollow, many times with a groove running its length, and the stalk's color is yellowish orange. The spore print produced by the yellowfoot chanterelle is white. Now this species tends to grow in wet conifer forests, typically from moss, even if the moss is growing up the base of a tree. I have the most luck finding yellowfoot chanterelles in areas with a lot of eastern hemlock trees. Next, let's talk about hedgehog mushrooms, starting with Hydnum repandum. So hedgehog mushrooms aren't too distantly related to chanterelles and black trumpets, because all these mushrooms are in the same order of fungi, the Cantharellales order. So like chanterelles and black trumpets, hedgehog mushrooms are delicious wild edible fungi. They're toothed mycorrhizal fungi that can be found growing summer through fall, and they're terrestrial mushrooms, so they do not grow on wood. They grow from the ground underneath hardwood trees and conifer trees. Now I'm putting that species name Repandum in quotes because Hydnum repandum is a European name. It's unclear whether or not the true Hydnum repandum grows here in eastern North America. So if we pick a mushroom that looks like Hydnum repandum, it's not really clear if that is the true Hydnum repandum that grows in Europe. A lot of work needs to be done on this genus, but we can feel confident in calling it part of the Hydnum repandum group for now. Regardless, it's a delicious wild edible fungus known as the hedgehog mushroom, also sweet tooth and wood urchin. So this particular hedgehog mushroom is a medium to large sized fungus that can grow to be 6 inches across or more. The texture of the cap is smooth and dry, and its color is yellowish orange to reddish orange. When you look at the underside of the cap, you will see a fertile surface covered with spines or teeth that are up to 1/4 of an inch long. This fertile surface is a pale orange color that bruises darker. So there are no gills or pores on the hedgehog mushroom. The key feature is that it contains teeth or spines. The stalk is a whitish color with orangish shades, and the stalk bruises brown when handled. The spore print of Hydnum repandum is white. Now there's another hedgehog mushroom or sweet tooth mushroom that's found this time of year, summer through fall in eastern North America, and that's the umbilical hedgehog, Hydnum umbilicatum. That species name umbilicatum means navel. So this mushroom kind of resembles Hydnum repandum in a lot of ways, though it's somewhat different in that it's generally smaller than Hydnum repandum, its cap is somewhat darker, and there's usually a conspicuous central depression on the cap, hence the species name umbilicatum. The cap of this mushroom is between 1 to 2 inches wide. Its texture is smooth and dry, and the color is reddish orange to brownish orange. When you look at the underside of the cap, you will see a fertile surface comprised of spines or teeth, like you would find in any member of the Hydnum genus. The teeth found in this mushroom are up to 1/4 of an inch long, and they're creamy white to pale orange. The stalk on Hydnum umbilicatum is between 1/2 inch to 2.5 inches long, and it's creamy white or colored like the cap. It also bruises a darker color when handled. The spore color produced by Hydnum umbilicatum is white. Now the habitat for the umbilical hedgehog is a bit different than that of Hydnum repandum. The umbilical hedgehog tends to grow in wet conifer woods, and I have the most luck looking underneath eastern hemlock trees. The next 3 mushrooms that we'll be discussing are the Haritan mushrooms. Maybe you're familiar with Haritan mushrooms, maybe you're not. These white-spored mushrooms include lion's mane and its allies. So Haritan mushrooms grow directly on wood, either living trees or dead trees, and the ones I'm featuring in this video typically grow on hardwoods. Now all members of the Haritan genus are considered to be edible, and you're unlikely to confuse Haritan mushrooms for members of any other genus. They're very easy to positively identify, at least down to the genus. Now what's really interesting is that even though Haritan literally means hedgehog, these mushrooms aren't colloquially really referred to as hedgehog mushrooms. That name is typically reserved for members of the Hydnum genus. So let's start with one of the most well-known members of the Haritan genus, which is lion's mane. Not only is this a choice edible mushroom, resembling seafood when cooked properly, but it's also been shown in the scientific literature to treat cognitive impairment and depression. And this is due to its concentration of nerve growth factor biosynthesizers known as hericenones and erinacines. So lion's mane consists of a cushiony, water-rich mass that is between 3 to 10 inches wide and typically the same size tall. The fruiting body of lion's mane is unbranched, and it's the only Haritan species in eastern North America that is unbranched. This feature will become much more apparent once I go over some lookalikes in the Haritan genus, which are branched. The fruiting body of lion's mane consists of numerous icicle-like spines or teeth that point downward and taper to a point. Each spine is soft and typically 1/2 inch to 2 inches in length. Bear's head tooth, or Haritan americanum, is another wild edible fungus that can be found throughout the summer months and autumn months. It's similar in size compared to lion's mane, and as a Haritan species, bear's head tooth is comprised of numerous downward pointing spines that are soft and white. One key feature related to bear's head tooth is that each spine or tooth is similar in size compared to the spines found in lion's mane. Keep that in mind because it's important. Now what really distinguishes bear's head tooth from lion's mane is that bear's head tooth has multiple branches or clusters, each one bearing spines or teeth. And remember, each spine is similar in size compared to the spines found in lion's mane. Now there's one more Haritan species that I want to feature, and this is Haritan coralloides. Many people refer to this mushroom as comb tooth or coral tooth. In the Latin name, coralloides literally means having a likeness to coral. This one resembles lion's mane and bear's head tooth because, as a Hericium species, it grows on wood and has a fruiting body comprised of numerous downward pointing spines. There are two key features to keep in mind with comb tooth. Number one, it contains multiple branches that arise from a central core, similar to bear's head tooth. And number two, the spines are very small. They almost look like teeth on a comb, and these spines are smaller than the spines found on bear's head tooth and lion's mane. So small spines and multiple branching, you're probably looking at Hericium coralloides, comb tooth or coral tooth. Next up, let's talk about puffballs. So there are lots of puffballs out there. Lots of families, lots of genera. Puffballs are considered to be gasteroid fungi or gastromycetes. And that term literally means stomach fungi because the spores of puffballs are produced internally, inside their fruiting structures. Contrast that to lots of other mushrooms which may produce their spores on external structures, gills, tubes, teeth. Now with all puffballs that are considered to be edible, you want to make sure that they're pure white inside. Cut them in half, top to bottom, open them up, make sure it's pure white inside. That inner material is mycologically known as the gleba. It's the inner fertile structure that will eventually contain mature spores. And these spores will become yellowish or olive colored or brownish or purplish. At this stage, it's too late to eat the puffball. You might get sick eating it at that mature stage. So cut it in half, make sure it's pure white. Also, make sure there's not a developing mushroom inside your puffball because some other mushroom species start out in an egg form and will eventually turn into a mature fruiting body. And those eggs can resemble puffballs. Some of those eggy mushrooms might be toxic, like Amanita mushrooms. Not all Amanita mushrooms are toxic, but it's very hard to tell which one you have in the egg form. So cut your puffball in half, make sure it's pure white, make sure there's no developing mushroom. So let's start with a big puffball, the giant puffball, Calvatia gigantea. Its genus name, Calvatia, comes from the Latin word calvatus, meaning bald, because members of the genus are nice and smooth. The giant puffball is a rounded, soft, white mass that resembles a softball, soccer ball, or volleyball, and though it is white when young, it discolors and becomes yellowish with age. An average giant puffball mushroom can grow to be between 7 to 12 inches across and 6 to 10 inches high. The puffballs much larger than this are routinely encountered. When cut in half, you will see the two main structures, the outer skin and the inner mass of developing spores. This inner material is white and soft when young, and this is the best stage to eat it, though it becomes olive yellow and brownish in maturity. And at this stage, you do not want to eat the giant puffball. Look for this fungus in open woods, along trails, but also in drainage ditches, lawns, and pastures, summer through fall. Another puffball you're likely to encounter during the autumn months, but also during the summer months, is the gem-studded puffball. This one belongs to a different genus than the giant puffball, the Lycopterodon genus, and its fruiting bodies are much, much smaller. Each fruiting body is white to cream colored and typically between 1 to 2.5 inches wide and up to 3 inches tall. It's rounded like other puffballs, though unlike the giant puffball, the gem-studded puffball typically has an elongated stem-like base. As its name suggests, the gem-studded puffball is usually covered with whitish spines and granules. These spines will rub off somewhat easily and won't always be present on the fruiting bodies. The inside of a gem-studded puffball is white when young, though it becomes olive brown and powdery when mature. At this point, it's too old to consume. You want to harvest and eat them when they're pure white inside. Look for gem-studded puffballs along woodland paths in soil or leaf litter. Usually they're not found growing directly on wood, but rather on the ground. We'll talk about one more puffball species that you're likely to encounter during the autumn months, but also during the summer months. This is the pear-shaped puffball, another member of the Lycopterodon genus. This one is Lycopterodon piriforme, and it shares a lot of features in common with the gem-studded puffball, but there are some differences to discuss as well. The pear-shaped puffball is typically a little smaller than the gem-studded puffball, though it can grow to be the same size. The color of the pear-shaped puffball is darker, however, usually tannish brown rather than pure white. And you occasionally see pear-shaped puffballs covered in tiny scales or spines, though these scales are usually not as apparent nor as dense as those found on gem-studded puffballs. The interior of this mushroom is white when young and olive brown and powdery when mature. Again, it's important to cut each one in half before eating, making sure it's pure white and that there is no developing mushroom within the fruiting body. The pear-shaped puffball grows in dense clusters on logs and stumps, so it's easy to fill your basket with these in a short amount of time. Now thus far we have not talked about any gilled fungi. We talked about polypores, we talked about toothed fungi, we talked about gasteroid fungi. I think it's time that we move on to some edible gilled fungi. And the first one that we will discuss is the Blewett mushroom. Now, I just want to throw it out there that this is not the easiest mushroom to positively identify. I don't consider it to be a beginner's mushroom. Definitely consult other quality sources like field guides, mushroom clubs, and other knowledgeable mushroom hunters before consuming blewits. You can also watch a video that I filmed on blewits by scrolling through my YouTube archives. Once you can positively identify it and you see it over and over, you'll have no trouble positively identifying blewits every time you do see them. So let's go over some key identifying features. The blewit, Lepista nuda or Clitosobe nuda, is a terrestrial saprophyte, meaning it grows from the ground and it decomposes plant material. It's a cooler weather species, so it's typically found during the autumn months, but you'll also occasionally see it during the winter months. The overall color scheme of this mushroom is lilac to lavender, though with age, these mushrooms can become tannish or light brown in color, making identification a bit trickier. The blewit is a medium-sized mushroom with a cap that is typically between 2 to 5 inches across and a stalk that is up to 3 inches tall. You'll oftentimes see a bulbous base located at the bottom of the stalk, but what you will not see on the stalk is a ring, a partial veil, or a rusty brown cortina. And a cortina is a webby veil typically found in Cortinarius mushrooms. Make sure your blewit does not contain any of these structures. The underside of the blewit contains closely spaced gills that are directly attached to the stalk. These gills are violet when young, though they turn brownish in age. Definitely take a spore print of the blewit if you're new to harvesting it. The spore print is pinkish buff. Blewits tend to grow in the leaf litter in mixed woods, often running parallel to a log, and many times you'll see a dense white mat of mycelium around the mushrooms. Alright, so we're nearing the end of the list. We're on mushroom number 14. Let's talk about the honey mushroom. So honey mushrooms are quite prolific during the autumn months, and they can be quite destructive. Many honey mushrooms cause something known as armillaria root rot all across woodlands in the temperate regions around the world. So honey mushrooms are considered to be edible and good by many people, but not by all. Some people just don't tolerate honey mushrooms. Some people don't like them. Some people get sick eating honey mushrooms. So if it's your first time finding and eating honey mushrooms, start small and cook really well. Now there are a variety of species in the Armillaria genus. We're only going to cover 2 in this video, starting with one of the most frequently encountered honey mushrooms, Armillaria mellia. This medium to large size mushroom grows in dense clusters, typically at the bases of trees, both hardwood and conifer trees. The caps of Armillaria mellia are up to 4 inches across. They're yellowish to yellow-brown, and they typically contain tiny black scales near the center. Underneath the caps, you will see a fertile surface comprised of whitish gills that are attached to the stalk. These gills are closely spaced and sometimes decurrent. The stalk is up to 6 inches tall, it's thick, fibrous, and stringy, and it usually tapers near its base. A key feature of Armillaria mellia is that it contains a partial veil or ring around the stalk. The partial veil covers the maturing gills when the mushroom is immature. As the mushroom grows and expands, the partial veil breaks and leaves a ring nearer to the top of the stalk. If you're unfamiliar with honey mushrooms, definitely take a spore print to confirm your ID. The spore print is white. A related species that's very common summer through fall is the ringless honey mushroom, Armillaria tubescens. This one resembles Armillaria mellia, the classic honey mushroom, though like its name suggests, the ringless honey mushroom is ringless. It contains no ring around its stem. This mushroom grows in dense clusters and it's incredibly common in people's yards, in lawns and park settings, and other open spaces. Ringless honey mushrooms are typically darker, usually tannish or brownish in color, and each cap is dry and covered with dark scales, at least when the mushrooms are young. The spore print of the ringless honey mushroom is white. Now make sure that your ringless honey mushrooms are not bright orange, as mushrooms that are bright orange and grow in dense clusters could be toxic jack-o'-lantern mushrooms. Ringless honey mushrooms, remember, are usually tannish or brownish in color. Also, keep in mind that not everybody tolerates honey mushrooms, including ringless honey mushrooms. If you decide to eat them, start small and cook very well. And this disclaimer also applies to Armillaria mellia. Now we can't talk about honey mushrooms without talking about another fungus that parasitizes honey mushrooms and turns them into something completely bizarre, but still edible and delicious. This fungus is better known as Entoloma abortivum, better known as aborted entoloma, or even better, abortive entoloma. This is our 16th and final mushroom of the list. The gilled fungi pictured on the left parasitize honey mushrooms and turn them into those rounded, whitish structures shown on the right. These white, spongy masses contain irregular depressions and are typically up to 4 inches wide and 2 inches tall. They're typically found near rotting wood and hardwood forests late summer through fall. Now the mushrooms shown on the left are edible as well, though they are not recommended for eating because they closely resemble many other gilled mushrooms in the Entoloma genus, some of which can be toxic. So in this video, I'm only going to recommend that you focus your appetite on the fungal masses pictured on the right, which are also known as shrimp of the woods, and are essentially parasitized versions of honey mushrooms. Okay, so there we have it, 16 wild edible mushroom species that you can forage during the autumn months, especially if you live in eastern North America. Now, many of those species can actually be found during the summer months. A few of them can be found during the early weeks of winter, and at least one, maybe two, could be found during the late weeks of spring. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you'd like to stay in touch, if you want to hear more about that online course, that year-long class that I'm currently creating, guiding you through all the seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, helping you positively identify and connect with the most popular edible, medicinal, and poisonous species, head on over to learnyourland.com, sign up for the email newsletter, put your name and email address in there, and I can keep you updated with that project. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next video.